Morning and welcome to Avero's live stream this week. My name is AV. I'm the founder and CEO at Avero Advisors. We are an independent third party consulting company that focuses on local and state governments in the US, helping them modernize their technologies. Um, and we do this from an independent standpoint, meaning we are not affiliated with any software vendor. So we're always in your corner. Um, Today's topic, and thank you for joining me, is we're going to talk about 2026 and what we might see in the ERP landscape. Now, I know we're just in mid-September or early September. It's about to get cooler. And, by the way, the only good thing about fall is that I get to wear my tweed jackets. Okay, so don't hate me because I don't like pumpkin spice lattes or sweater weather, but there's a silver lining, tweed jackets. But anyway, I digress. We're going to talk about 2026. Um, and I know it's a little early to be talking about next year. It's a little scary because we just got into 2025, but here we are, and things are moving really fast. So I want to talk about the perceptions and the paradigm shifts in ERP on how clients, if you're watching, if you're thinking about an ERP implementation or a selection process next year, um, we need to talk about what's changed. A lot of times we see that we're still working from a 20 plus year old framework on how ERPs work, what goes into implementing them, how do you select them, and what happens in the implementation process and what to ask for in an RFP. These are critical aspects of the work that we do. A big part of what we do is helping you, the prospect, the client, understand that as you go down this path of modernization, that things have changed. Uh, if you have done this back in 2002, you did it a certain way. The product suites were different, the players were different, the methodologies were different, and it's very different today. And I'm not just talking about AI. Yeah, we'll talk about AI and how it fits into this whole ecosystem and how to make sense of what our vendor friends are talking about in terms of baking AI into the product and how it's going to revolutionize your organization. But what does that mean for you when it comes to assessing what you need, what kind of RFP to put out, how do you go through the process of selection, and eventually, what's the best methodology to implement your ERP systems? So if you're joining us, please let me know in the chat box where you're joining from, and I am taking questions. We'll keep this interactive, and pop your questions in, and I'll attempt to answer all of them. This live stream will then be available on our YouTube channel. Please go check it out. Lots of great stuff on there, and all of our social media channels. And along the way, we will be giving out a few freebies. Thought leadership articles and checklists and worksheets to help you make decisions on which ERP to choose, how to go about it. Are you ready for AI? So stay tuned. Um, and I have prepared a visual guide for us to go through. So getting into this topic, 2026 and paradigm shifts. And this came about because we were talking to a vendor friend the other day, and we were on the same page as far as what are clients asking for. Things like AI maturity, things like um, cybersecurity is becoming a huge part of ERP RFPs as it should be, and now AI. And then how do we change our perspective about things like training or reporting? And therefore, what do we again ask for in an RFP that will be effective and useful for your organization? So we'll talk about all of that today. Again, taking questions, and I'd love to answer as many as them as possible. So let me know where you're joining from, and we will go from there. So, like I said, the fundamental transformation happening in government ERP implementations today is a lot of it's being driven by AI. Yes, but it's not perfect. AI within the product, AI in the selection methodologies, AI in the implementation and training methodologies. This is huge. And again, if you're releasing an RFP in 2025, late 25 or early 26, or whenever in 2026, these things need to be included or thought about and really apply it to what that means for your organization. So the first thing is, why am I making 26 a big deal? Why do I think that there's an inflection point we're at, and why things need to change and will change, um, especially when you're transforming your organization from 20 plus year old technology. It's not apples to apples. Things have changed. Our methodologies need to change. So what's the first one? And AI maturity has not been reached. There should have been a question mark there. Will it reach maturity, and what does that even mean to you? You're a government agency looking to modernize from a legacy platform to a new platform. What does AI maturity mean to you? Now, we have developed an AI maturity model that I am going to pop up on our screen here. Please take advantage of that. Scan the barcode, the QR code, and you will land on the maturity assessment. Now, there's two aspects to this. Is the AI product suites, what's available on the market, what's being applied to your products that you're buying, are they mature enough to be deployed within your organization, within your infrastructure? Two, are you mature enough to take advantage of cutting edge AI technologies? And there's a lot to be said and a lot to be discussed on that. And we have a 5 step process, a 5 maturity level model that will help you understand where you stand today and where you need to go in order for you to take advantage of these modern technologies. So, natural language processing, automated decision making, these are wonderful words to say, but if you're not ready for it, then it's not going to work for you. The next thing is the workforce revolution. We're we're now in this phase where Gen Z will represent 25% of government workforce by says by the end of 25, but it's probably already there. And these folks, they've grown up with technology. They're internet native. They are now AI native, and they expect their work environment to be modern. They don't want to work at a green screen. They don't want to peck at keys. They want to work, they want to do meaningful work, but they need the tools that they expect or have in their daily lives to be the same or similar at the workplace. So there's a revolution on the workforce happening where things like 6 month training classes or really digging into manuals is not a thing that the new workforce really expects or wants to do. And there are tools available that can help new implementations train the workforce better. That doesn't necessarily just rely on uh, weeks long training classes. And then there's regulatory pressure, right? We've talked about this before. All 50 states they're attempting to implement AI legislation this year. The feds and the White House is trying to or has released their AI stance, and it's this is a pivotal moment because this is helping our clients and the agencies we serve modernize their operations. It's helping them leapfrog some really old technologies. But it's really important that we don't, go too far over our skis here uh, by just jumping into AI. We need to really think about what all of this means for your organization and where you've been so far. And we've all heard of the horror stories, right? I don't want to harp on the failures, and there's plenty of YouTubers and thought leaders out there that all they talk about is, what's failing and what's not failing. What we don't talk about are the success stories. Every day we have successful implementations and go lives and successful negotiations with vendors for our clients. And one of these days we'll make a compilation of all the successes that happen in the ERP world. But what you don't want to do is end up in the news, right? For a failed project. So lots of examples out there. $2.6 billion dollar impact on Canada's payroll disaster with the Phoenix Space System. This has been in the news. LAUSD's SIS issues with the implementation not working, or in Australia, the Queensland Health $1.2 billion payroll overrun that crippled the largest health system. And more recently, we were seeing the state of Nevada was hacked or had a cyber attack. Lots of examples of failing and failed projects that lead me to believe that it's not necessarily, it almost never is a product or a technology problem that's causing failures. It almost always is management or lack thereof. Lack of planning, lack of project management, lack of a strategy to make sure that these large scale projects that impact thousands and thousands of people go well. Um, so we're all learning from failures. We're all learning from disaster stories, and but that should not be our focus today. The other thing is the customization trap, right? We've legacy ERP implementations. When we go to do assessments or start on a modernization project, the first thing that we ask is, okay, what product are you using today? And why is it so unique? Every organization is unique, right? Even within city governments, utilities, you go to the neighboring town, there is some nuance there that that makes that organization unique. So with the advent of SaaS and organizations and companies selling a one flavor fits all product, you're either forced to change your business processes to fit that product, which isn't a bad thing. If it needs to be done, if it's a modernized way of doing things, go for it. But also we've been in this customization trap. Minute, small processes. My theory is no ERP system will automate or modernize 100% of your processes. There's always that 20, 30% that is so unique to you that you have to have workarounds, you have to have customizations. And so therefore you will go through this large 2, 3 year implementation. And at the end of the day, you'll have these micro processes or functions that don't have automation, that don't have a product solution to it. And that's what leads to customization, again, which hasn't been bad before because that's the only option. You either have workarounds, stay on paper, you know, build your spreadsheets and have some roadblocks and redundancies there. But customization then leads to you being held captive by a specific set of technologies. So, and in that, the vendor or the software provider will promise you everything because when it's customizable, when you're willing to pay for it, the sky's the limit. And your bank account does not think that way, right? Uh, so scope creep multiplies. Every department demands their own customizations, and that's where we're with the legacy platforms that are now saying you have a deadline of end of 26 or end of 27, and we need to move you to our latest and greatest SaaS platform. Yeah, we've customized the heck out of your incumbent solution. Not just the product owners, but the system integrators then add their own flavors on top of it. So it becomes really complicated to undo this ball of yarn. And then your technical debt sort of accumulates. What that means is how much money do you have to pay to keep your old technologies running while you're looking to modernize, while you're doing all these great things, strategizing, putting out RFPs that are fantastic, but you still need to make sure that your older systems still work because implementation and go live doesn't happen right away. You have to spend some time getting to the end goal. All of these factors, and then you layer on top of that bad project management, lack of strategy, lack of leadership. You need governance. You need an executive sponsor that can make decisions. You need a committee that can help make decisions and synthesize data and information. And you need to treat this as if this was a once in a lifetime project for you. It's no different than building a new courthouse, a city building, police station. You have to be very, very meticulous about how you deploy these projects so there are no cost overruns, timeline delays, or user rejection. You imagine doing all of this work and then the users don't like it. They don't know how to use it. They don't adopt to the system, and now you have shadow systems. People using older systems to do the business while the new system sits there and maybe does one or two processes. And this is pretty prevalent in things like permit management, right? You can't put a stop to issuing permits. You can't put a stop to taking in applications while you're implementing a new system. So the mistake that's usually made is that you rush through and implement a new system and keep using the old system. And then you don't know where the cutoff is, where you have to bring over older permits or applications in process into the new system. Um, all of this can be avoided, and that's just an example that happens in every function. All of that can be avoided with effective, detailed project planning and execution. So the other great debate that's been raging, and we've done some live streams and sessions on this, is monolithic versus composable. And composable is another way of saying best of breed, meaning your function gets the best product that's out there um, for your department or your function. And then all of these best of breed solutions sort of work together to produce the results that you need. The traditional model is monolithic ERP, which means one single vendor sells you everything, and a lot of them do it well, right? The biggest products in the world, SAP, CGI's offerings, Tyler Tech, they claim that they can do it well, and if deployed well, yes, that is true. Again, comes down to how do you do implementation? Did you really scope this well up front so that the software provider knows what your needs are? And a lot of times, what happens is if you haven't thought through your requirements and your future state processes and how you want this organization to run post implementation with the new product, mid implementation, you will start unearthing requirements that were not socialized or publicized in the RFP. So the vendor has no idea. So the pricing is off. And now you're talking change orders. Yes, these are SaaS products for the most part, but that doesn't mean that they're completely malleable or that I mean, they may be, but there's always the cost associated with implementing something that was not priced in the RFP and therefore in the contract. So, um, yeah, you might have single vendor lock in, but a lot of these single vendors do it well. Um, but the problem with that is that you land in this situation where now you have an all or nothing upgrade, right? Your product that you've been using is being sunset, and the software provider says you have a deadline, sign here, or we're going to pull the plug. Not the best way of doing business, but it is what they have to do to keep up with the market and technology. They can't keep supporting 20 plus year old technologies across the board. So there's pros and cons to both sides. And then obviously, customizations become a nightmare, 5 to 10 year implementations. On the composable side, the promise is you can have the best product for your organization and function. Uh, but also you can land in this situation where you're doing continuous deployment, which is not a bad thing. Again, if you've managed it, if you have a plan, if you have desired outcomes and timelines and budgets for it, it can be done. But the promise is that with APIs and modern ways of connecting data, you can make it work. And the promising thing also is 90-day cycles, right? We're starting to see different ways of procuring product where it isn't the traditional 1 year long selection process and then a 3 year implementation. People are starting to get creative about how do you, especially in best of breed and composable, can we get something that works? But that doesn't mean that you don't do the due diligence up front. In fact, in a composable scenario, you have to do more due diligence because you want to make sure that all of these products will work together. Promises during the sales process are one thing. You need to have the vendors show you that they can do it, which isn't always straightforward because sometimes these products have not worked with another product. In theory, they should be um, interfaceable, but the proof is in the pudding. All right, I'm going to take a question here real quick. How can agencies ensure accountability and risk mitigation if they move away from exhaustive requirements lists in the RFP? It's a good question. So let's talk about what exhaustive lists mean. Back in the day when I started in this industry, um, we had 10,000 line item requirements. It was a badge of honor to have multiple thousands of requirements for a specific project. And you needed to do that, right? You had to specifically ask a vendor what code it's written on, what kind of tables, what sort of technical infrastructure is behind the scenes on the software, because no two products were similar. Today, we're in the realm of almost commoditization of ERP products. It's not 100%, but most of them are similar. The magic is in the back end, right? What cloud you're using, what kind of technologies are happening in the back end. But if you don't do robust requirements definition, uh, you run the risk of not holding the vendors accountable for what the product actually does when it's implemented. But backing out from that, the modern way of doing things is outcomes based, right? You don't need the 10,000 rank requirements. You don't need to ask the vendors what kind of code they've written this on because it's could be a combination. And honestly, who cares today? You don't want to ask them if they can run AP and cut purchase orders. Every product does it. So the requirements set that we're putting out for our clients is significantly reduced. It's outcome based, and therefore you need to tie the contracts and your negotiations and your implementation to these outcomes that are defined up front. So it doesn't always have to be exhaustive, but it has to be there. You need a requirements list, and it needs to be well thought out. The process doesn't change, right? The the set of requirements that go out in your RFP will change. They will become less voluminous and more impactful, but the process of getting there is the same. You have to do business process reviews, analysis, and really think through how the product is going to transform your organization in the future. Thank you for that question, Megan. So what's happening with AI? I mean, there's several. Again, the stories are plentiful, right? There's success stories and failure stories on AI. When ChatGPT was first released, when it hit the market, it became mainstream. I think it's sort of a switch happened there where people went from being uh, worried about new tech to being excited about new tech, right? The speed at which AI can do things is very promising. And so there were a lot of failed projects early on because people just jumped into it without thinking about data hygiene, internal processes, policies, what that means for their organization as a whole. And it didn't go anywhere. I think the next wave was where people were like, I see the promise, but I don't want to touch it. Legal said no, IT said no. So we're not going to touch it. And then there were forward-thinking, sort of early adopter agencies that actually took a thoughtful approach to this. And a few good examples are City of Las Vegas is doing natural language queries that replace SQL queries and reports, um, where the analysts can now talk to the data. It's natural language reporting. Miami-Dade County has AI-powered invoice processing, which, by the way, we do in-house too. We've built some really cool in-house automations to run our business. And then the state of Utah has a microservices architecture that's enabling department-specific AI tools while maintaining enterprise-wide data consistency. And that is the key. How do you maintain data consistency and hygiene across the board while you let departments do AI deployments? So lots of great things around that to think about. And again, when it comes to ERP deployments or RFPs or selections or implementation processes, how does this show up in your RFP? How does this show up into the document that the vendors and the software providers respond to? And what sort of requirements are you going to put around AI? Because every major software provider out there uh, is AI first now. You look at their marketing, and it's all AI first, AI enabled agents, this, that, and the other. And it goes beyond just having chatbots and natural language reporting. Um, Most companies are baking in AI into their products. On the back end, they're using AI to create these products, and the user community will then slowly adopt and take advantage of these technologies. Again, if as long as you're ready, these are some really cool things to look into. So the next paradigm shift I want to talk about is reporting. Again, back in the day, in the 1900s, we had to really nail down what the current reports are. Clients expected you to replicate existing reports for compliance reasons or internal reasons. They have certain reporting that they need to make sure appears on the new system. And modern products can do it all. So the paradigm shift here is reporting it doesn't always mean massive sets of PDF documents. Yeah, you might need them for your council or commission meetings or board meetings, But for the daily user, for the daily decision maker, if they want a specific set of data that will help them make a decision or run their department better, they shouldn't have to wait for 48 hours at least or months to get a specific report because older technologies are being used. So how do you ask for the right thing in an RFP? The paradigm shift is that, yeah, there are certain reports that you get from your current system that are required by a certain agency that funds you, is an oversight committee, what have you. You need those. But on a day-to-day basis, when it comes to reporting, what that really means is access to data, meaningful data, without having to go dig for it. So modern dashboards, natural language processing, um, being able to talk to your data and have dashboards that are meaningful to you as a user. So if I, as AV, log in, I'm the public works director, the things that are important to me today and for this week should be visible right away. If I want to dig into it further, I should be able to click around in that pie chart or a line graph and see what that means. So I think business intelligence, dashboarding are things that have been around for a long, long time, but they also needed their own implementations, and sometimes they were overlooked, right, in favor of the main ERP implementation. But with modern tools and modern products, and all of these major ERP systems have these products built in, we need to be cognizant of what we're asking for, that we're not just asking for old school crystal reports or SQL, blah, blah, blah. Yeah, you need that for the technical folks, but for the majority of your user base, it needs to be intuitive, it needs to be in front of you, and it needs to be with AI, conversational, so that you can get the data that you need. As you're sitting in a council meeting, as a city manager, as a finance director, you should be able to talk to the data and have confidence that the answers you're getting are actually accurate. So that's the other paradigm shift. So thinking about thinking about reporting and what that means in 2025 and will mean beyond here is really important. The next thing is training. Traditionally, implementations, a huge part of implementation is obviously educating your user base on what the new product looks like, how it feels, how it works, what the clicks are. And it was done in classroom. You would have, depending on the size of the implementation, you would have a month or two of training where you had waves of people coming into a war room, training on the product, pre-implementation. It could be rolled into user acceptance testing, but that's just one aspect of training, right? When you do an RFP and you ask the vendor that you insist on a 6-month training process in classroom with every user being trained, keep in mind they can do it. They'd be happy to do it. It's just going to escalate your cost. The downside of that is people forget. I forget things a lot when I'm trained on a new thing. I need to go back and learn it again. But you're not going to set up classes every time someone forgets something. And then you have complaints about how you didn't train them, how you didn't give them manuals. All of that is normal and natural because it's people going through change. So, what's the modern way of training? Yeah, you need some classroom training. Pre implementation, maybe you need some power user training. You need overviews of the product. But the smart move here is, in addition to that, leaning on self-learning tools. Uh, all of these modern ERP products have self-learning tools. They have videos that are contextual to the window you're on. They have AI-based training. They have chatbots that can help you navigate the interface, or tell you where to go get certain piece of information or data or report. All of that's available within the platform itself. And it can be as robust as walking you through every click or giving you the concepts of it. All of that is ongoing training. And it's also important because most SaaS products release new versions and new capabilities, new functions every 6 months, if not every year. And so how do you keep up with training? So you can't be stuck on, we're going to do classroom only training, and if we don't do classroom only training, that we have failed this implementation. That is not true anymore. People like learning on their own, especially the newer generation, the new workforce. They don't want to be in classrooms. They can learn anything they want with the device in their pocket through GPT or whichever other AI product that you're using. So, changing the mindset on what you're asking for and how you want to train your audience, your users is critically important because I think that is what the users also expect. And if you don't ask for these things in your RFP, then you're giving an option for people to say you didn't train us. So again, this becomes very critical as you start the implementation process to socialize this aspect of it, that training, yeah, we'll have some classroom training, but most of the training will have to be self-managed, self-paced, and you'll have to take it upon yourself to learn the new system, which again, you look at any modern ERP solution, any modern software platform, they're very intuitive. If you can use an iPhone, you should be able to use a modern ERP product. There's a question coming in from Manish. Traditionally, requirements gathering. I'm going to have to read this elsewhere. This is a long question, Manish. Traditionally, requirements gathering begins with users expressing what they want, followed by mapping those needs to the capabilities of an ERP system. But what if we flip the process? Instead of starting from user requests, we could present the feature sets of top 10 ERP platforms and have users select the functions that align with their operations. Is this emerging as the modern way forward? What benefits does this bring? Is it emerging as the modern way forward? I'm not sure, but it is an option. So when we help our clients pick a new product, there'll be a phase in their pre-RFP where we will bring in one or two um, providers, software providers, to show clients what a modern system can do. Because a lot of times, you go into an agency and they're on COBOL, they're on green screens, and that's what they've done for the last 20, 30 years. And so asking these users what they would like to see in a new product, um, sometimes the dots don't connect because they haven't seen anything else. They've done this job really well with this product, and to them it works. So the script does not need to be flipped completely. I think there's value in showing what modern ERP systems can do today to the user community. But I don't think we completely flip it because there's still value in doing some visioning, helping them understand that it's not all about the product. And again, most products do the same thing today. It's about what outcomes you want, how you want your agency to function in the future, and then which product's going to fit your needs best. And in the government sector, also, you have to be procurement savvy and make sure that you're not violating any of these statutes that say you cannot give anyone any undue advantage, right? So it has to be a mix of approaches. Uh, but you're right, it doesn't always have to be from scratch, from ground up, like we used to do in the past. Uh, but let me throw another idea or thought I just had is with AI and how quickly you can now iterate products and create products. I think there's value in actually sitting down with the user and having a meaningful mapping session. Like, how does this process work? What do you want to do in the future? And if none of these major providers can do what they're asking for in their main product, and they don't want to customize, there's an opportunity here for micro SaaS, which is not a new concept. But again, the speed at which you can iterate and build product today can be actually plug and play if it works well. It's in theory. So back to training, traditional methods still work. They still need to be involved. But there's several examples of um, counties and cities doing it in a smarter way, where you're doing, King County supposedly had reduced training from 6 weeks to 3 days using AI assistant. Sure, I don't have full context. That's a large county, but it's promising, right? You can do it without having your users sit through classrooms. Because again, I'm not a good classroom learner, and I'll forget and I won't pay attention. So you need to give your users other avenues to learn the product. And the new buying process. So here's another thought or paradigm shift I think is bound to happen. Um, a lot of times when we see RFPs that we haven't worked on, or RFPs for our services, they come from somewhere else. Like the client that the organization that released this RFP has picked up the scope from some other neighboring city or county and slapped their logo on it. Uh, and it happens, right? You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to be really careful about what that means. If this applies one to one to your organization, and that's where customizations of these scopes come in the way. Um, but the traditional process, the 18-month long RFP process, 500-page requirements, have led to failure rates because you're not asking for relevant things today. You're not asking for things that are important and being offered by the clients, by the vendors today. If you're looking at an RFP that was released by a neighboring city 10 years ago, it's too old. Those requirements do not fit anymore. You have to be outcomes focused. You have to bring in modern things like reporting and AI, what that means for your organization. And what we're seeing is pilot first approach. Again, best of breed, easier to do if you have a smaller function, a smaller product. A lot of clients are doing pilots. They'll reach out to vendors and say, I want to use your product in a contained fashion to see what it does for us, and then we'll go from there. Um, a lot of, I mean, almost all of major ERP providers have cooperative contracts, right? So that's another way to go, but it still doesn't negate the fact that you have to do your requirements definitions and think about your processes before you buy something. You have to be dead sure that this is the right product for you. And like I said, it's never 100%, but a product that gets you almost there is good enough. So what does all that mean? Why am I talking about this today? It's really important. We at Avero are transforming the way we do RFPs. We just released one, by the way, for the Port of Portland, Oregon. Great organization, and they have a massive ERP modernization project that's underway. The RFP is on the street. If you're watching and you're interested in responding to it, please go check it out on their website. Um, but a case in point is that we released that RFP in 9 months, not 18 months. Again, which seems like a long time, but think about it. We spent a lot of time working on their processes, requirements, future state, and really nailing down what they want to do and how they want to do it in what order. Um, so timelines are getting strong because savvy consultants are using AI, clients are AI first, and they're leaning into it from that standpoint. But again, it changed how quickly we could do the deliverable, but it did not negate the fact that we still had to spend man hours working with the client, understanding their operations, understanding their needs, and therefore using all of that data to release an RFP. So that upfront homework uh, will not go away for a long, long time. I'm sure there's products out there that promise to be the consultant for you that are AI based, but my theory is that yes, you can use those, but you still need experience and expertise guiding you through that process. So if you're in the market, if you're thinking about an ERP project in 25 or 26 or beyond, get in touch with us. We can help you strategize and formulate the exact path that will reduce risk and ensure a higher rate of success. So uh, if you haven't yet, go subscribe to our YouTube channel. Get in touch if you have any questions, and if you're ready to transform your government ERP or digital transformation on any other technologies, I hope you'll get in touch with me. With that, I'm going to thank everybody that joined today, and we'll see you next week. Thanks.